building artificial reefs in Florida, and we'd like to talk a few of these ideas. Jeannie and myself are part of Beyond Coral Foundation. We're a non-profit that started here 2 years ago during the Art With Me festival. We are science-based non-for-profit that have art and awareness at our core values. And we've been developing a robot which is currently in process in Australia called Charm. It's a coral husbandry automated raceway machine. You can see a brochure downstairs. Basically what we're trying to do is use technology to help build more resilient corals through an automated process which will ideally bring the costs of growing corals down. This is a patented invention in the US, and we're also trying to create a VR place of the lighthouse that we developed this year with MIT, with an MIT intern, and Steve, who's our president and is currently in Australia.
Director of Research for the Ocean Rescue Alliance. We have the project, the 1,000 Mermaids project, which Evan is passing around our pamphlet for more information. We build artificial reefs, but we're actually a marine conservation and restoration nonprofit organization. So we actually use different techniques to restore our marine environments. So we focus highly on coral restoration and providing fish habitat, and that can be done through that creation of the artificial reefs. So we actually create artistic artificial reefs to help draw in that ecotourism and help connect people to the ocean. A lot of you obviously care a good amount of coral. You're here for the talk, but we really want to start impacting people beyond that care from the ocean. How do we get people to care for marine environments? The ocean's often out of sight, out of mind for many people. And we're wanting to help change that public perception to thinking more about the marine environments and how their daily impact can affect the reefs. So one of the ways we're able to do that is through incorporating art into our artificial reefs. This creates unique dive locations and enables us to really connect the local community. We really have a dream to hopefully bring some reefs here to Tulum as well as other parts of Mexico and really connect culture, because we now have the ability to expand and even connect Mayan culture to the reef, and a Mayan theme reef as well.
We like to use art as a problem solver. We're arts advocates and community builders, and building the community of people to care about our oceans and our reefs, but using art as a way to bring in the awareness, to get people more conscious about these issues that are plaguing our reefs. And we use the mermaid as that anamorphic creature that would always lure in, the sailors, and there's so many, sirens call. So using the art and using these stories and using the connection to the ocean to hopefully bring people back to the ocean, to get people to care about the ocean. And then in this instance here in Tulum and our friends in Cozumel and all throughout Mexico and all the reef tracks, we want to be able to use the art and the ecotourism element to help support communities, to help give them a whole new industry, to have people come dive here potentially one day to plant coral through Beyond Coral with Charm. It would be an absolutely beautiful thing. We have the ability to create jobs for kids to potentially help us as the next wave of coral gardeners and coral farmers, and just creating whole new industries and whole new generations of change, which is definitely, I know, welcomed here. But we do that through the art, we do that through the awareness, and we do that through partnerships with our friends from Beyond Coral, our new friends from Corales Tulum, and we're very grateful to be here. And we have some videos looping to show some more context, but just like how the accident happened with how he just explained in Spanish with the coral fragment, this was art just as an aha moment to save the reefs, and here we are in Tulum. So thank you guys for being here with us.
I believe she asked a little bit on the creation of artificial reefs. We really highlight the value of research and creating reefs that mimic natural reefs. So as corals are unfortunately dying, we need to start creating structure that helps support other marine fisheries. So if you think about smaller fish species that actually spend their time on these reefs to grow, and then they come back to feed us, we need to keep implementing new creation of artificial reefs to help provide that habitat. So we really highlight on different biodiverse habitat type to support those fish.
just a little context.
Is this picture in Florida? This is
Like
something that
West
you already done.
West Palm Beach area, yeah.
Near Miami Beach.
Yeah.
And did you do other, like, more than
Sites?
this?
Yeah.
See?
So now we do a diversity of different art initiatives. So the 1,000 Mermaids started it, and our goal is to reach 1,000 mermaid sculptures over time.
And then after the work is done, then you plant the coral there also?
Yes, we embed them with a threaded receiver screw plug called a core lock that we're able to very safely, with permits and divers and the government involved, be able to outplant the coral fragments to super corals to hopefully be able to grow much faster on our reefs. And if we're able to use the charm patent that Stephen Rodan from Beyond Coral has developed, that could really help accelerate a lot of these processes, which would traditionally take 80 or 100 years. And now, hopefully, we could potentially get them down to 1 or 2 years on best case scenarios.
And the really good benefit with the coral lock is you guys are very familiar with coral restoration. It takes a lot of time, effort, and resources. It costs a lot of money to restore corals. And each individual coral is glued on to that reef. You're also using cement and epoxies. With the coral lock, we're actually able to work with other coral restoration practitioners and nurseries to grow them on the coral frag plugs on land, and then have the ability to just simply screw them into the modules, either on artificial reef structures or even on natural reefs. So we actually implement mini habitat modules, which unfortunately we're going to bring a few, but we're unable to. We have some in the video where we can actually outplant 10 to 20 corals at one time. So we're actually testing with a few different universities to test its efficiency on natural reefs.
It would be nice to give a bit of a few interesting facts about corals. I don't know how many of you know. Corals are animals, as I already mentioned. They've been here for a long, long time. 450 million years ago. It's longer than the dinosaurs that were 250 million years ago. So they've been here for a long, long time, but we never really noticed them. We wanted to share this because we want to share a little of what we're doing, and especially to ask for some help for supporting the reef here in Tulum. And for this purpose, I would like Roxana to talk to us about the situation of the reef here and what we could do to help.
Hello. Well, maybe I'll just give you guys some background. Most is our team. We have 3 of us here. I think there are like 10 or 12 that are permanently in it that have been in it from the beginning. So 3 years ago we started with a lionfish culling project, and that's when we first noticed the strange thing in the reef. It looks kind of like that photo over there, where you have the 3 different colors. You have the algae growing, and then the bone where the tissue just lopped off, and then the healthy coral. So we've been monitoring now for about 2 years, and we've probably lost about 80% of the stony coral. The stony coral are the reef building corals. The first to go was the pillar coral, which is the one that's just there. It's kind of a fuzzy one. That one is actually the last one we ever saw alive, and we were able to send a piece to Inapesca, which that's the government that has what I call the Noah's Ark, which is where they're keeping pieces of coral so that they can, if this ever goes by, this disease that it has, it will, they can plant it again in the ocean. So a little bit about stony coral. They detected it in 2014 in Florida, and it kind of followed the same path that the lionfish did. We had no heads up on it. We had no idea what it was, but we knew it was something different. So we started to take photos, and we had GPS points because we were there in the ocean anyway. And then, so we were able to detect that stony coral started in 2014 around Florida, and it took about 4 years to cover 400 kilometers. When it reached Mexico, the first reports of it were in Puerto Morelos around the same time that we first noticed it here. Puerto Morelos is 100 kilometers away. That means that within a few months, it was able to cover the same amount of territory that it did in Florida in 4 years. We don't know why it is. We think maybe it's because we're closer to the coast, so there's a lot more pollution, there's a lot more fishing, there's a lot more of all these other things. That's why it's called in Spanish a syndrome, síndrome blanco, because it's a bunch of factors that make the coral weak and make it more susceptible to stony coral tissue loss. So it's kind of like the weak ones went first, so the damage at first was a lot quicker, where we were seeing coral heads disappear within a couple of weeks, which is what they're seeing now in the U.S. Virgin Islands, which is where it's reached now. It's different than bleaching, but it also is connected to bleaching, because when something bleaches, it's also weaker, even though it can recover from bleaching. That's the difference. From stone coral, we've seen it slow down a lot. Like some of the corals are starting to look resistant. We also have a lot of little baby corals. We're seeing which species are resistant, but the ones that are the most resistant aren't the strongest reef builders. So if you have pillar corals, are probably some of the most important are the orbicelas, which are the big massive boulder corals. So that's going to give you a lot more protection from storm. And those are the ones, nobody talks about them a lot, I think because they're so big that it's a little bit slower. So in this photo right behind him, this is an orbicela, and you can see where it's eaten out in the middle. That one disappeared, I think, within like 5 months. It took it to completely disappear. Now it's moving on to the coral next to it. So those are the massive coral heads. The captain started to say that they couldn't find the dive sites because they were turning white because they look into the water to see them. But now they can see them again because it's all getting covered by algae. So also if you have two sorts of substrate really, that like the small turf algae where coral can settle again, or maybe on wormholes or a crustacean coralline algae, it's like a minimum superficie, minimum cover of where the new corals can actually grow. So the situation is really dire, and what's caused it is because of our habits, and it's the way that we live, and we live this way because it's a little bit of greed, and then okay, so we're destroying our natural environment so that we can have money to live on this planet, but there is no amount of money that can return that reef to what it was 3 years ago. But I think that there's a lot we can do. There's still some hope.
Español, porque no sé cómo hacerlo en inglés.
Sí, claro.
¿Cómo se realizan esos corales artificiales?
I think somebody else might want to take that. There's a bunch of different ways.
Ellos justo son los que hacen eso, entonces por ahí está chido que yo
We can get to
igual
that.
de muchas
Yeah.
maneras, porque digamos, un coral artificial se puede formar de una estructura que se haya caído y sobre eso puede empezar a crecer el coral. Particularmente creo que lo que ellos hacen son estructuras como si fuesen de
Cemento,
de
creo.
cemento, con alguna forma medio artística, y sobre eso la idea sería que
Y como que plantan corales, o sea, y que crecen. Bien.
Sí, los corales son animales, pero pues al final se plantan, y la forma de restaurar es sea sexual o asexualmente. Si lo haces asexualmente es a través de un proceso que se llama microfragmentación, donde lo que haces básicamente vas generando clones. Entonces el coral tiene una propiedad que es como la piel, y entonces un científico de Florida que se llama David Vaughan encontró por accidente, uno de estos accidentes felices en la ciencia, que se le cayó un fragmento, y cuando se separó, pues entonces vio que las células, digamos, crecían mucho más rápido. Como cuando te cortas, crece más rápido, lo mismo sucede. Entonces este proceso permite crecer de 30 a 45 veces más rápido un coral en una tina, digamos. Entonces esa es la forma asexual, pero también queremos la forma sexual, porque no queremos perder diversidad genética. Entonces, para la cuestión de manejo arrecifal, lo que se busca es donde puedes restaura a través de sistemas sexuales de reproducción, que se da una vez al año. Aquí en Tulum es más o menos en la primera luna llena de agosto. 2 días después es el coral blooming, ¿no? Que es lo que llamamos aquí la orgía de coral. Y entonces, básicamente el tema es identificar bien lo que se quiere tratar y diferentes instrumentos para distintos procesos de restauración. Now I'm going to introduce my friends Evan and Shelby that are here. They do exactly what you asked. Ellos hacen precisamente lo que preguntaste. Ellos hacen arrecifes artificiales, entonces tienen experiencia en esto, y me gustaría cederles la palabra.
From a science aspect, just as you were speaking, there's a lot of other restoration strategies that are going on currently. Just as you were saying with Dr. David Vaughan, fragmenting is predominantly done. And I can speak to some issues that can come along with that. I heard him speaking on some of the genetic aspects. It's really valuable with sexually reproducing corals, because each one of us are unique. We each have different immunity, so we're able to fight off different diseases. It's extremely important to have that genetic diversity, because it helps stronger generations all the climate changing factors like this. So the problem with fragmenting coral is it's actually an exact genetic clone. So if you have a mother colony, you can actually cut off 100 corals, and they're all the same one. So a lot of movement to actually sexually reproducing corals, which is what I do with the University of Florida and the Florida Aquarium, on breeding corals just like this image, the pillar coral. We're able to actually reproduce them in a lab and have them settle out and then outcome the coral. This is extremely resource intensive, and we need a lot more labs doing it, but again, don't have the funds, and a lot of governments aren't backing it up via their obligations. So we need to come up with these innovative techniques to help getting funding for restoring our reefs. And one of the things with our project is bringing that added value of being able to create that supplemental habitat, and then also give us the ability to take genetic salvages, just like they were saying, they sent off different coral species for preservation, because one day we can help bring it back and continue spawning them and breeding them from other areas to help repopulate.
Amen.
It's really good.
Amen.
As a very famous diver once said, what's the point of going to the beach? It's like going and not going into the sea. It's like going to the circus and not going inside the cup. Now, reefs are very important because they support local communities such as this, not only in terms of divers, but fishermen as well. And here in Tulum, we have a very rooted problem of unsustainable fishing. So an artificial reef can also create another space for fishermen to come and have a trade-off with what they're doing, which was what originally happened in Holbox with the whale fish, with the whale sharks. What happened there is that they created these programs so fishermen could stop fishing what they were doing, which was extracting everything, and have an income, because we can't take livelihood from the people. So artificial reefs are an excellent solution for this. Here in Tulum, most of the corals, maybe Benji would like to talk about this, they stop really where the roundabout is, where Can is. That's where most of them are. There are some coral bits spread out all the way to Siancan, but not many. I would like them to talk about this in a minute. But their importance is, first of all, they stop wave energy. They can stop to 97% of the wave energy. So they are the first line of defense against hurricanes. And we don't see that, of course, because they're in the sea. So it's very important for non-profits to be outspoken, because the corals can't speak for themselves. And in that very same way, corals do have a very poetic reaction to their death. And that is, with bleaching, when there comes a point where they're dying, and because the temperature of the sea rises and they're animals, they start sweating, and they don't sweat like they do, like we do. What happens is they start expelling the algae, and so they lose their color. So that's why they become white. But the thing is, they have a symbiotic relationship with the corals. They give them energy in exchange for the food that they obtain from photosynthesis. That's why we have very few deep sea corals. And in this exchange, they create these fossilized structures that protect us. And they also harness most of the local fish. 25% of the species in the sea are estimated to live around corals. So fishing, economy, tourists, and my favorite animal of all, the parrotfish. The sound that we have here is basically fish poo. The parrotfish comes, it eats the corals, and when it processes it, it comes out as sand. So if there are no corals, there will be no parrotfish. If there are no parrotfish, there will be no sand. And what's worse, if we have no corals to stop the waves coming in, what we'll see is what's going on in Playa del Carmen, which is basically no beaches. So we've got to invest now in regenerating, in creating new patterns for creating and sustaining this life, so that we can continue having the paradise that we have. So Benji, please. Benji is a very experienced diver from Corales Tulum. He's been all over the place, and I would like him to share his experience and point of view.
First of all, hi. My name is Philip. I have two names, Philip Benjamin. So you can call me Benji or Philip. I've been in Tulum for a couple of years now, and the first impression from diving here at the reef was, on one side, it's amazing to see all these corals and all this diversity and really beautiful waters, but then pretty fast I realized, or most of us realized, that there's also something very wrong going on at the reef. has two main aspects. One is where are the fish, and the other one is why are there no colors in the corals. In the beginning, we didn't understand much of what was going on here. I mean, I'm not a biologist. I'm by no means a scientist. I used to be an electrician before I became a diver, but I grew up at the sea. So I've seen healthy seas, and it was pretty obvious that here it's not very healthy. Something's wrong. So we started communicating that in the diver community here, that what's going on in the reef, what's wrong with the corals. And we realized by research and by talking with other groups that there are diseases affecting the reef. And one of the main diseases, stony coral tissue loss disease, that is affecting mainly the big boulder corals, the actual structures of the builders of the reef, so to say. So what's happening is, I think one main reason of what's happening is this development, that this growth of Tulum, it's happening so rapidly and so fast that many things are being neglected. Things as residual waters, as mangroves, things like that. The mangroves are just being cut down to build hotels instead of the mangroves. Hotels are no filters, so the mangroves used to filter all the grey waters before they entered the ocean. Now you don't have these great natural filters, so all the waters entering the ocean come full with nutrients. The nutrients feed the algae overgrow the corals and suffocate them, and that causes many problems to the corals. Then about the residual waters, as you probably have noticed yourself, there's a vast growth on the hotel zone and all of this area, but for example, there's no canalization, there is no sewage system. It's all in tanks or in small sewers, and supposedly you have all these trucks that come here and take the residual waters and bring them to a processing plant, but there's only one processing plant, and that's far away. So for all of these hotels to process all of these waters, there's not enough structure. So what really happens is a lot of these residual waters are just dumped into the jungle. So we have, as you know, we have the cenotes and the under-earth river system here, which means anything you dump on the soil, on the ground here, gets absorbed by the limestone because it's porous. It ends up in that river system, and the river system ends up at sea. So whatever you dump here is going to end up in the sea eventually. So all of this create a very hostile condition to the corals. Together with climatic change and with the warming of the oceans, we have reached a point where the corals are practically in a constant stress. And bleaching is one thing that we're seeing. Then we have the white plague, we have the stony coral tissue loss disease. Now we also see cyanobacteria growing in the water. All very clear indicators that the water is not clean anymore. It's not healthy. It's not able to support the corals. And where it affects the corals most, sadly, is at the hard corals. The hard corals are the base of the reef. Without them, the reef doesn't exist. We also have the soft corals and the Posidonian fans and things like that, which are also important to the reef, but they don't build the reef. The hard corals are the real builders of the reef that make this entire reef a barrier, a protective barrier from weather and from all of the natural phenomena. So the hard corals here are not that many. I was surprised to see that the hard corals are less than 100 in a number here. So right now, only from stony coral tissue loss disease, we've gotten to a point where about 4 to 5 of these coral species are close to extinct.
I think taking this information to the community is what's our priority for the time being here, while we help organizations like Corales Tulum do their work in the water and work together with scientists in getting all the technology that we can so we can build this together. But at the same time, we need to bring in the local community. We need to bring in the Mayan community. We need to bring in the locals from Tulum. And for this, we've got to create other strategies. Behind you, we have two infographics developed by artist Amy Frua. And they have small bits and pieces of information, but we need outlets to let people know what's going on. Because if not, they won't be invested. And if nobody's invested, then there's no future for this. So if you can do something, you spread the word about this. And this brings me to maybe one last subject on this regard, and that's how do we create artificial reefs integrating to the local culture? We've been talking many designs. We have this beautiful idea that we actually have in VR decorated with corals by our friend Brooke, that you know. So, and the design we took at one point from the Kukulkan that's in Chichen Itza. So it's this beautiful design of a Kukulkan that we thought, because it's something we envisioned, that we could plant here. However, it's very important for us to think that this is, although I am Mexican, for instance, I am not Mayan. And a few of the designers are not even Mexican. So it's very important now to start building this bedrock with the community, creating this interest and finding local artists that can help bring in this design so we do not appropriate this culture, so that they build it with us and so we can create something new together. And I think this is very important.
The drone's coming back.
Welcome to the Ocean Rescue Alliance, a marine conservation and restoration nonprofit organization. We combine science, art, education, research, conservation, restoration, and the community together to restore our marine environments. Marine ecosystems are compromised around the globe, and many people feel that their impact may be too small to help. Pollution, warming temperatures, ocean acidification, and destruction are harming the very life that supports us all. Coral reefs are dying at an alarming rate, and if we do not take action now, they may completely vanish. Coral reefs are the lungs of the ocean and the most biodiverse ecosystem in the world. They protect our coastlines, support fisheries and livelihoods, assist with carbon and nitrogen fixation, and may provide the key to unlocking ultimate cures for our deadliest illnesses. If nothing changes, we are looking at the potential extinction of coral reefs by 2050. Now is time to take action, and you can help. Here at the Ocean Rescue Alliance, we are implementing innovative techniques to restore our marine environments. Our artificial reefs create complex habitat that provides homes for a variety of fish species, while our artistic designs and sculptures enable every individual or company the opportunity to create their own eternal reef that helps restore our marine environments. Art-themed reefs such as the 1,000 Mermaids project creates unique dive sites for all to enjoy. We work with our partners like Reef Cells to combine cutting-edge science, technology, and materials to create devices that enhance restoration efforts. The Coral Lock, a threaded device designed to increase coral outplanting efficiency, enables us the ability to outplant 10 to 20 corals at one time. We're excited to be restoring natural reefs in Florida with the Coral Restoration Foundation and Seacorps International to outplant coral with the Coral Lock mini habitat modules. Our education program seeks to empower and inspire our future generations to maintain our marine environments, coupled with our citizen science program, the Coral Rangers, which engages our local communities in reef monitoring and coral restoration efforts. Our research continually improves our designs and supports our efforts to conduct sustainable restoration. Our goal is to spread awareness and create marine habitats that will last for generations to come. Each one of you can help, volunteer, create a reef, donate, dive with us, and at the least, share this message. You can help us save the reefs. Through Aura, our alliance will unite marine conservation and restoration organizations around the globe, helping us save our oceans one reef at a time. Join the alliance today.